All right. 9:35, I'm looking at Alex, we're good. I am going to introduce our first speaker. This is the chance that she's like, okay, it's me, I'm next, good. Who's sponsored by Tate Communications. Tate, their vision is all about creating safer, more proactive organisations by redefining the boundaries of critical communication. So massive thanks to Tate for sponsoring Feng. So Lily is the category marketing manager for Fisher & Paykel Healthcare. She wanted me to mention she's not washing machines and whiteware. Fisher & Paykel are more than that. They are healthcare. They are a very proactive organisation and push a lot of innovation boundaries, which is really exciting, and solve a lot of problems for clinicians with innovative designs that improve the outcomes that they deliver to patients all over the world globally. Lily has been a senior product manager, a product development engineer, a product manager for Asian markets, and is now working with a global team at Fisher & Paykel Healthcare, helping change critical practices to improve patient care and outcomes. She finds the work really rewarding and super humbling, which is lovely. We had a bit of a chat earlier. She's currently also training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So if you see her in the breaks, don't mess with her. She's lean, but she's a formidable fighter. Please welcome Lily Feng to the stage.
What do you do 22,000 times a day?
Breathe.
Absolutely, you got it. So join me in taking a breath in and a breath out. It's pretty easy, right? Well, it needs to be, because we do this thousands of times a day. This is thanks to our diaphragm. It's a muscle underneath our rib cage. When it contracts, it pulls down and expands our chest cavity, and air is brought into our lungs. For people that have respiratory compromise, say COVID, breathing becomes more laboured. Maybe you have experienced it yourself. And this puts extra stress on our diaphragm. At this point, if we don't give a patient respiratory support, they could develop respiratory failure. This is when the patient can no longer breathe for themselves. When this happens, a more invasive and more intensive therapy is required. For example, non-invasive ventilation on the left or invasive ventilation on the right. These therapies, although can be life-saving, have downsides. For this gentleman on NIV, he cannot eat, he cannot drink, and talking is difficult because he has a mask covering his mouth. On the right, this woman cannot talk at all. People invasively ventilated often are sedated and have a feeding tube. Secondary infection, mucus plugging of breathing tube, and pressure injury to the lung are some consequences of this therapy. For the man, claustrophobia, pressure injury to the face are some consequences and complications for that therapy as well. At Fisher & Paykel Healthcare, we improve patient care and outcomes. In particular, the Evo product delivers a less invasive therapy called nasal high-flow therapy. We want to support the patient before they get to a point where they need a more intensive and more resource-intense medical support. Our patient groups are neonates and babies, are the elderly, and any patient in between. In the bigger picture, Evo product and nasal high-flow therapy fits in one of many product groups within Fisher & Paykel. If patients escalate from this therapy to non-invasive or invasive therapy, like that images you saw before, we supply humidifiers, breathing tubes, and masks to support these patients. We also support our little ones from their very first breath and beyond with our product of neonatal and infant range. You may even know someone who has sleep apnea that is using our CPAP machines and masks. I certainly know people that have been affected and have used our products, and some of them are my colleagues. This is Emma. She works in the infant production line. When her grandson was born, he needed help with his breathing, and the doctor told her that there was one more thing they can try before they had to intubate him. And that one more thing was the product that she actually made. She said that everything that passes through her hand has to be perfect, because that next product could save someone else's grandchild. So that's just one patient. But prior to COVID, we touched the lives of 16 million patients in over 120 countries. Now, how did a company on the other side of the world be in a position to help so many people around the world? Well, it started with solving a problem. Medical gases given to patients are far too dry and cold, and it's drastically different from normal physiological conditions. In fact, medical oxygen and medical air is drier than the desert. This has detrimental effects to our upper airway defense. To give you an example, breathe onto your hand. It feels warm and humid. And now compare that with the room condition. So our bodies heat and humidify this comfortable temperature and lack of humidity to fully humidified 37 degrees at 100% relative humidity. So what's the solution? Heating and humidifying. But let's zoom in a little bit deeper. So if we zoom into our upper respiratory tract, we see a lush carpet of cilia cells lining our airways. And these cells are hair-like structures that work together, like synchronized swimmers. They work together to pierce into the mucus layer that float on top of them, and they push that forward and up. This is the main way we defend ourselves from respiratory infection. Our upper airway is, however, sensitive to changes in temperature and humidity. And let me show you. Dave talked about sheep before. This is sheep upper airway tissue. So the right tissue is subjected to conditioned gas, meaning fully heated and humidified. On the right, we reduce humidity by just 10%. The flickering in the image shows beating of the cilia, and the black dots represent bacteria, virus, dust, pollen, anything we're breathing in from the air that we don't want in our lungs. At 15 minutes, you can see that mucus on the right has dried and it's becoming harder to transport. After an hour of this experiment, the tissue on the right has completely dried out. This gives a chance for pathogens to replicate and make us sick. You might be wondering if you're doing the same right now. Absolutely you are. We often don't notice or think about mucus transport on our day-to-day lives, and I don't blame you. But when we are sick, we produce a lot more mucus. When this is brought up, it triggers our cough reflex. For us healthy individuals, when mucus is brought up, it triggers our swallow reflex. Now, how much mucus are you swallowing every day? Think of a shot glass, that's 30 mils. Now double that. Yum, right? So humidity and the right amount of humidity is crucial. Now, I'll let our founders explain the very first concept.
The humidifier was developed to satisfy the requirements of the acute respiratory unit. And when we had studied the requirements there, we brought it down to the laboratory for development. The requirement is to add moisture and heat to the gas provided by the artificial respirator, and it's important that the moisture be added as moisture vapor. This is how we did it. It's attractive to add the moisture from a purely evaporating surface, and this we've done by coiling up the heater plate in the form of a scroll, on the inside of which there is an absorbent surface made of absorbent paper. Just a coil of highly absorbent paper, coiled up like this and fitted into the inside of the scroll. Now when this is assembled, the top of the scroll is sealed by the cap, and the bottom of the scroll is sealed by the water in the container, which provides operation time of about 8 hours. Air or gas entering from the respirator must enter the outside of the scroll, and to get to the exit must pass around the whole length of the scroll, coming in contact with a very large area of evaporating surface.
Here we have the latest model compacted into a single unit, making it easier for the nurses and ancillary personnel to handle daily servicing requirements. We are very satisfied with the freedom from condensation in this delivery tube, which is warm. Also, the freedom from sticking an exhalation valve, preventing undue rises of inter-lung pressure, and of course, the temperature and moisture of the gases breathed into the lungs are at the optimum for recovery of these patients with the minimal complications. This is particularly important in patients like this who have been on a respirator for over 4 weeks and may need it for a week.
Pretty amazing, right? Fish and Paykel invests in roughly 10% of our operating revenue back into R&D. And because of this, it has developed many products beyond just the jam jar. So that includes Evo 2, which is a product developed and released in 2009. The Evo 2 was released in 2012, and this year, Evo 3 was released in New Zealand. Between each of the iterations, hundreds of hours is spent talking to clinicians, spending time with them in their environment to understand their needs and their challenges. Our people are in 53 countries around the world, with just under 4,000 in New Zealand and over 7,000 globally. Like any business operating internationally, we have barriers of distance, language, culture, and time zones, especially having our headquarters based in Auckland, New Zealand. These barriers are overcome by hiring passionate people who are smart and dedicated. But more importantly, they care. They care about patients and they care about people that look after them, and on a global scale. Every 5 to 6 years, the company has doubled, and we aim to maintain this. So that means in 6 years' time, we would have needed to hire another 7,000 people globally. This means we need to think about recruitment, manufacturing, and office space. In New Zealand, we have 4 buildings with R&D and manufacturing co-located together. And we have a 5th building being built as we speak. In Mexico, we have 2 manufacturing buildings with a 3rd on its way. Our operating revenue is almost $1.7 billion. And if we're spending 10% of our revenue back into R&D, that's $154 million. And this is one of the keys to our long-term success and maintaining the market leader position. With 50 years of R&D and 50 years of working side by side with clinicians, we've become experts and market leaders. So when COVID hit, we knew our responsibility to the world was significant. I now want to share what Fish and Paykel did throughout COVID. Early 2020, before the lockdowns, our CEO decided to respond quickly. 120 people were pulled from their regular jobs into work streams, and these looked after sourcing of raw materials, increasing production capacity, distributing products to the world, health and safety, social responsibility, and looking after our own people's well-being. This is an image of the 10 a.m. daily operations meetings. Now, the three men sitting on the beanbags is our CEO, VP of Sales, and VP of Products and Technology. Increasing production capacity also involved recruitment and training production staff. Nearly 2,000 people were trained last year. Our lecture room was converted into a socially distanced training facility. Safety petitions were created where 2-metre distancing could not be achieved. Initial rapid response barriers were set up, made of cardboard and perspex. Later, screens were set up. Clear screens were purposely built in order to maintain social interaction between our production staff. There was a time when freight volumes out of New Zealand was less than 1% of normal. This is a picture of a 747-sized freighter we chartered, packed full of products to Europe during their spike. Our salespeople worked in distribution warehouses in split shifts to help ship products to their customers so patients are not left without. Even the president of Chile helped to unload Vision Paykel products for his country. The end result are devices in hospitals and used on patients. This is an example of products or Evo tubes we supply to a hospital in Poland. On the right, an emergency hospital in South Africa. Sorry, on the left, and on the right, a large hospital in New York. This is Tina, our sales specialist. She is in Wuhan, China, unboxing, setting up, cleaning and disinfecting the Evo right outside the hospital. Supplying equipment wasn't enough either. We also needed to train clinicians on understanding the therapy and also how to use the product. This was me in Tucson, Arizona during the height of COVID, helping with a device implementation. I also travel from state to state to understand how we can support clinicians. Here is my colleague in Saudi doing the same. The impact of our products is undeniable and life-changing, and it was only made possible from everyone in the business, from our cleaners to engineers, from procurement to distribution, and from sales to education. It all started with an idea, humidification, and now it's a broad portfolio of products. So what's next? Well, what's next is really the same thing that we've always set ourselves, which is to improve patient care and outcomes. For 50 years, we've touched the lives of clinicians, patients, and their families. We have stepped up during COVID, and we will continue to pursue our goal of improving patient care and outcomes. These devices we provided during COVID can now be used for patients with illnesses we've always had. Kids with RSV and bronchiolitis, adults with pneumonia, COPD exacerbation, post-surgical, post-intubated patients all potentially need our products. How I think of my job as a category marketing manager for the Evo is I want clinicians to be empowered not only with the equipment but also with the knowledge so they can provide the best respiratory support for their patient so that they can get better and return home to their families. To me, the next patient could be someone in an ambulance right now going to Christchurch Hospital. The next patient could be a baby being carried in by its parents to the ED up in Middlemore in Auckland. Or it could be a grandma that's developed pneumonia in her home in Dunedin. That's just New Zealand. Let's think about all the patients in Australia, or even the next patient anywhere and everywhere in the world. Because the next patient is someone's father, brother, and friend. It's someone's sister, daughter, and grandchild. The next patient could be my family member. It's not just a product that we make and sell, but it's a product that we will use on our own loved ones. All this started with a jam jar. What is your jam jar? And what can your team believe in and live by? Thank you.
So good. What's my jam jar? That's what I wrote down. That's going to be my question. Right. Thank you very much, Lily. Stay there. Don't go anywhere. We've got Q&A. This is the time that you open your app. If you've got a question that you would like to ask Lily, you need to go into the schedule, open up the opening keynote session, add a question, and there's a live Q&A. While you're putting your questions in there, I'm going to give you this to say thank you so I don't forget. That's my job. And we're going to take a seat and ask a couple of questions. Oh, there's a good one there. And have a little chat. So, one of the questions that's come in, let's get a bit closer. And you're right, I don't think about my mucus transport. There was a little part of me that was like, oh, this sounds revolting. What have been the benefits of being specialists rather than generalists?
Ooh. What's the benefit of being a specialist rather than a generalist? Is this working? Testing. If we think about the medical industry, there are so many different diseases, there's so many different things that people need, right? There's ventilators, there's dressings, there's hospital beds. I think being specialised means that we solve one problem and we do that really well, and from there that develops into other technologies that develop into something that we didn't even think it would do. For example, nasal high flow therapy. When we released the product in 2009, we wanted that product to be on a ward sort of use basis, but now it's used in the ED, it's used in the ICU, and it's even used in the home as well for patients. And so being specialised, I think, brings focus, but at the same time within the company, we have a bit more generalised with respiratory humidification. We are even in surgical humidification, as well as treating adults as well as neonates too.
Nice, thank you. There's another one that's had 7 votes. This is good. How do you decide on the pricing model in a time of rising healthcare costs and inflation?
Ooh,
is that something you can answer?
No, I don't think I can. No, I think that's very market dependent.
Yes.
I think we have a responsibility to supply products. We have a responsibility to innovate and produce products that work and have high quality. In this market at the moment, especially with COVID, there were a lot of, say for example in the US, they had the emergency authorization order that opened up the market to a lot of different other companies that may or may not have had the same R&D and the same sort of quality and just the experience as well. So I think pricing can be a sensitive topic, but it's an important one to make sure that it is sustainably chosen and the company can grow sustainably as well as treating patients.
Nice. How do you encourage innovation in your organisation? Like what do you do? What are the things that you do that encourage people to actually think differently and think new?
I think what's really humbling and what we focus on a lot is sending our engineers and sending people from New Zealand into the market. And so earlier this year, I was in the States for 3 months, traveling from state to state every 2 or 3 days to a new city. But the whole point is to really understand our customers, really understand their patients, how that's changed, and what their new challenges are. So I think it's very much being our customers, seeing what problems they're having, and from there working with them to come up with a solution. And fundamentally, we care. And if you care about something enough, you will overcome a lot of barriers. And there's a lot in the medical industry as well.
When you recruit, is that something you kind of look out for, that innovative mindset, the empathy piece, Is that like right up there in terms of
Absolutely.
skills?
Absolutely. I think if someone wants to help people, and look, not everyone does, but most people do, but that's one of the main things is, do they have that drive to help people? Because sometimes we can get bogged down with paperwork, especially in the medical industry, and we need someone to see through to the end where there's that next patient. And that's why for me, thinking about the next patient being my family member really keeps me going, and we can push through when going gets tough.
What was the biggest challenge for the business, the biggest challenge when COVID hit, and how did you overcome it?
Well, one of the biggest challenges for us was we were one of the main suppliers of the breathing tubes for patients who were invasively ventilated. And a lot of people were, right, with COVID. And so our responsibility is to make sure that we produced enough, but we also made sure we distributed correctly. So there were people that were wanting to buy a lot to stock up, but we had the challenge of making sure that we distributed it evenly between, and we had a look at the trend as well, where there were peaks in COVID, and we distributed that. So I think that was quite challenging, just because everyone wanted the product and needed it, and we wanted to make sure that it was distributed well.
How many people in your IT team? Roughly.
Roughly.
Is it big?
I think it's big. I would say it's like 3 digits.
3-digit big. That's quite big. But you're a big organisation.
Yes. Yeah.
If you posted a question that didn't get answered in this part of the session, you sticking around for a bit? Hey, you're around during breaks. So Lily will be around during breaks and throughout the day. So if there is something you want to know more about, please do go and find her. Some of your imagery was very emotive, which I loved, and I love the what's your jam jar. So as an action, that's what you need to write down if you haven't already, or typed it into your notes app, tech people. What's my jam jar, or what's our jam jar? Please give a round of applause to Lily. Thank you very much.